This episode is presented to you in the form of an audiobook. Wouldn't it be amazing if you could take one look at someone and instantly know what they're thinking, what they want, and who they really are? In his book titled, Read People Like a Book, social interaction specialist Patrick King suggests that while mind reading might be out of reach, you can get pretty close by learning to interpret people's speech, behavior, and body language. In this episode, with the help of the lessons given from the book, you are going to learn how to read and understand people. First, we'll discuss the obstacles we face when trying to read people effectively. Then, we'll explore the driving forces behind human behavior. In the third part, you'll learn how to interpret non-verbal cues, the silent signals people send through their body language. And finally, we'll wrap up with practical strategies to detect lies. Part 1. The obstacles we face when reading people. We all like to think we're good judges of character. You meet someone, exchange a few words, and confidently think you know exactly who they are. But in reality, assessing another person is harder than it seems. People often misinterpret signs and then arrive at misguided conclusions about how another person feels or thinks. Patrick King advises that to avoid falling into this trap when trying to read another person, you should consider some factors that might affect your interpretation of their behavior. So, how do you become a better judge of character? Patrick King offers a list of 4 prerequisites. First, you must know their baseline behavior and how they normally act. Second, look for patterns. Don't rely on a single moment or a single gesture. Third, consider the context. What's happening around them that might explain their behavior? And fourth, question your own biases. Are you projecting your feelings onto them? Let's explain in detail each obstacle. For King, the first trap people fall into is that they don't take the time to understand how someone typically behaves. If you want to understand someone, you need to study their baseline behavior before looking for deviations. Think about how detectives in TV shows observe patterns. They don't assume anything about a suspect until they've seen what's routine for them. To accurately read someone, you have to know how they normally behave so you can pick up on anomalies or changes in their behavior. For instance, if your friend tends to have low energy, you shouldn't interpret their lack of excitement about something as indifference. It might just be their usual way of being. The second trap Patrick King talks about is that people usually rely on a single moment to interpret the behavior of a person. The problem is that you can't form a conclusion about someone based on a single data point. Let's take another scenario. You're giving a presentation at work, and you notice your coworker Dave frowning. Your immediate thought is that he hates my idea. But was that frown the only thing you noticed? Did Dave offer feedback after the meeting? Or was he frowning all day because he had a migraine? One single moment doesn't tell the whole story. You must pay attention to multiple data points to form an accurate conclusion about someone's inner state. The third trap most people fall into is that they usually never consider the context and how it might explain the behavior of a person. You have to consider the context in which a behavior is happening, or you'll likely misinterpret that behavior. For instance, if someone is speaking loudly in a crowded room, you might think they're angry, but in reality, they could just be trying to make themselves heard over the noise. Additionally, recognize that you yourself might affect the other person's behavior. For example, if you're interviewing someone for a job, Your authoritative role might make them appear more nervous or reserved than they normally would, which could alter your perception of their confidence or personality. Finally, let's talk about the hardest part: your own biases. We all have them, whether we like to admit it or not. If you're naturally skeptical, you might see deceit where there's none. For example, if someone avoids making eye contact with you, you might think that they're hiding something. But what if they're just introverted or shy? Patrick King reminds us that our assumptions can cloud our judgment. Often, what we think we see in others says more about our own insecurities, fears, or prejudices than about the person we're observing. So, if you want to read people better, you must avoid the trap of projecting your own feelings onto them. Separating your emotions from the situation helps you see their behavior more clearly. Part 2. Understanding the driving forces behind human behavior. What is the driving force behind human behavior? This is a question that has fascinated psychologists, philosophers, and anyone who's ever wondered why people do what they do. For Patrick King, there's always a reason why people behave the way they do. By understanding what compels a person to act, you can uncover the why behind their behavior. To truly understand someone's actions, you need to look at two key aspects of their psyche: their motivations and their personality. A person's motivations are shaped by several factors working together: subconscious urges, the pleasure principle, the hierarchy of needs, and the desire to defend the ego. These elements influence how we act, react, and pursue our goals. Subconscious urges are the part of ourselves we prefer to hide. According to King, this is where our subconscious motivations live. It's the messy part of our mind, filled with things like insecurities, creative desires, dislikes, and even self-loathing. These are the feelings we'd rather ignore, not just from others, but even from ourselves. The problem is, these hidden urges don't stay buried forever. King explains that they often surface in ways we don't expect, sometimes driving behaviors that seem out of character. For instance, imagine someone who's always wanted to start their own business but never took the leap. They might downplay a friend's success in launching a startup, not out of malice, but because it stirs their own feelings of regret and unfulfilled ambition. These subconscious urges influence our actions more than we realize. But if you can recognize what's driving someone's behavior, you can better understand them. You'll see why they act the way they do, and you'll know how to respond more effectively. The pleasure principle is another element that influences the motivations of a person. According to King, much of what we do comes down to a simple equation: seeking pleasure and avoiding pain. It's an instinct as old as humanity, deeply ingrained in how we make decisions. However, this principle isn't always straightforward. King highlights two key rules to better understand this principle. Rule number 1. Avoiding pain is more powerful than seeking pleasure. When given a choice, our survival instincts prioritize avoiding harm over chasing rewards. Imagine spotting a bag filled with money sitting on train tracks with an oncoming train speeding toward it. The temptation of riches might cross your mind, but your instinct to avoid injury or death would win every time. This instinct extends into everyday life. Think about someone who stays in a miserable job. It's rarely because they enjoy the work. It's often because the fear of financial instability outweighs the discomfort of staying put. pain, or the fear of it, frequently dictates our choices more than the promise of pleasure. Rule number 2 about the pleasure principle is that emotions overrule logic. This means that even when we know the logical thing to do, our feelings often take control and lead us in a different direction. Emotions are powerful and can push us to act in ways that don't always make sense rationally. For example, you know that staying up late binge-watching a show is a bad idea. But as soon as the next episode starts, the excitement pulls you in, and you keep watching even though you'll regret it in the morning. The motivations of a person are also influenced by the hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy of needs works like a ladder, with each level building on the one before. At the bottom are survival essentials, food, water, and shelter. Next is seeking safety, stability, income, and health. Once those are secure, we seek connection, relationships, and belonging. Higher up, it's self-esteem. We seek feeling valued and respected. And at the top is self-actualization, which is pursuing creativity, purpose, and contribution. To understand someone's behavior, you need to figure out where they are on the hierarchy of needs. Are they focused on basic survival like food and security? Or are they striving for connection, self-esteem, or a greater purpose? Knowing this helps you see what's driving their actions. Another element that dictates the motivations of a person is the desire to defend the ego. At its core, the ego is our sense of self, how we see ourselves and how we want others to see us. We all want to feel smart, capable, and respected, but when that image is threatened, things can get messy. Think about it. How do people act when their self-image is at risk? They might get defensive, blame others, or try to cover up their vulnerability. For example, someone who takes pride in being great at their job might make a big mistake. And instead of admitting their mistake, they decide to blame circumstances or a colleague. The desire to defend the ego plays a huge role in shaping behavior. If you want to understand someone's actions, ask yourself what part of their self-image feels threatened. The personality is the second aspect of a person's psyche that dictates behavior. Personality is the unique way someone thinks and behaves, making them who they are. According to King, it's a consistent pattern that helps you understand how someone usually reacts to the world. If you understand a person's personality, you can usually predict their behavior. For example, you might notice that a friend always stays calm under pressure, even when others panic. That's a pattern of stability and rationality. Or perhaps a coworker tends to procrastinate but pulls through at the last minute. That's a pattern of working best under deadlines. These repeated behaviors aren't random. They reflect the underlying traits of their personality. For example, a funny personality is simply the pattern of consistently making jokes or using humor in conversations. To quickly summarize Part 2, if you want to understand why a person behaves the way she does, you need to look at two key factors: her motivations and the patterns she shows through her personality. Motivations drive her actions, what she wants, fears, or needs, while personality patterns reveal how she consistently reacts to the world around her. Part 3. How to read non-verbal cues. People are always revealing themselves, even when they don't realize it. Their actions, expressions, tone, and even their clothing all tell a story. Your job is to look beyond the words. Watch their movements, listen to how they speak, and notice the small details. Each one adds a piece to the puzzle, helping you understand what they're really feeling. King explains that nonverbal communication comes from the emotional, instinctive part of our brain, the part that can't lie. While we can choose our words carefully, our body language, facial expressions, and even tone often betray our true feelings. First, let's talk about stress. It's one of the easiest emotions to spot. When people feel uncomfortable, they often display self-soothing behaviors. These are small actions like rubbing their hands, touching their neck, or fidgeting with their clothes. Imagine someone adjusting their collar or playing with a necklace during a tense conversation. It's their body's way of calming down. There are also the classic flight, fight, or freeze responses, our brain's way of handling perceived threats. These reactions still show up in everyday situations. Someone leaning back or shifting away might be in flight mode, looking for an escape. A clenched fist or sharp gestures could signal a fight response. And freeze. That looks like someone sitting stiffly or gripping the edge of a table. Now let's focus on the face. Micro-expressions are tiny, involuntary movements. They happen so quickly that most people miss them. For example, someone might say, "I'm fine," but a split-second tightening around their eyes could tell you otherwise. These moments are like glimpses into their unfiltered emotions. And you can read a person if you learn how to spot the contradicting micro-expressions. Have you ever noticed someone copying your posture or gestures during a conversation? That's mirroring, and it's a sign they feel connected to you. If someone mirrors your movements, crossing their arms when you do or leaning forward as you speak, it shows alignment and comfort. On the flip side, a lack of mirroring can signal discomfort or distance. The way people use space says a lot about their confidence. Confident people take up space. They sit tall, make expansive gestures, and leave their torso open. Meanwhile, someone feeling unsure might shrink, hunch their shoulders, or cross their arms to make themselves smaller. These physical cues give you a sense of how comfortable or confident someone feels in the moment. Speech is another window into someone's emotions and personality. Confident people tend to speak clearly and steadily, while nervous individuals might talk too fast or stumble over their words. The way someone dresses says a lot about how they see themselves or how they want others to see them. Here, context is key. For example, someone overdressed for a casual event might want to stand out or assert their status. Part 4. How to detect lies. Patrick King points out that one of the main reasons people want to learn to read others is to catch deception. Nobody likes being lied to, and knowing when someone's being dishonest can give you a significant advantage. Whether in negotiations, relationships, or everyday conversations, catching a liar is no easy task because people lie in all kinds of ways. Some get visibly nervous, while others stay calm, composed, and confident. And the best liars, they know exactly how to hide their tells. So, how do you cut through the BS and uncover the truth? Here's the trick. Don't confront the lie directly. Get them to talk. Lying is hard work. It takes mental energy to keep a story straight, especially when made up. The more they talk, the more likely they are to trip up. Start with open-ended questions. Keep your tone friendly and non-threatening. You're not interrogating them. You're just getting the story to flow. For example, if they claimed they were at a cafe, ask, "What did you order?" Or, "How was the atmosphere?" These open-ended questions give them room to elaborate, increasing the chances of inconsistencies. Once they've shared the big picture, shift to specific questions. Ask about details they might not have rehearsed. What song was playing? Which seat did they take? People who are telling the truth tend to remember small details naturally. Liars, not so much. And here's a clever trick. Subtly misquote them. If they said they arrived at 3 o'clock, later mention, "You got there around 2:30, right?" And see if they correct you. Small inconsistencies like this can reveal whether their story is solid or shaky. Next, pay close attention to how they behave as the conversation unfolds. Don't fixate on one thing like fidgeting. Look for patterns that feel off. Does their demeanor change? Maybe they go from relaxed and chatty to tense or overly serious when the topic shifts. Or perhaps they suddenly dodge your question with a vague answer or deflect by saying, "Why would you even ask that?" Another tell. Liars often feel the need to over-explain. Truthful people are fine saying, "I'm not sure," or "I don't remember." Liars, on the other hand, might fill every gap with unnecessary details to make their story seem airtight. The key to spotting lies is about spotting patterns, changes in tone, behavior, or the little cracks in their story. The truth has a way of surfacing, especially when you stay calm, curious, and observant. So, next time you're faced with doubt, don't rush to conclusions. Just let them talk and watch carefully. The answers will reveal themselves.